What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Hope you're all doing good today. We've got a great video for you today. We're going to be covering some Notre Dame football. The Irish, one of the premier brands in the college football landscape. I have a special guest with me today, Daniel Mingea. Thank you so much for coming on. Would you like to introduce yourself before we get into it?
Yeah, I'm Danny Mingea with UHND.com. I cover Notre Dame football and recruiting for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming on. As always, we appreciate you having here, taking your time out of your day to come on the show. But without further ado, let's get straight into this because we do have a lot to cover today. Notre Dame, like I said, one of the premier brands in college football, and they are looking to make a name for themselves in this new 12-team format. Of course, they were one of the teams that qualified, a couple times in that 4-team. But I think they really feel like this is their time. Like they're putting together a roster, like they've got the NIL presence and whatnot, and the right coach to make a push. And they are going to be one of the teams to beat this year. They're predicted in the top 10 and a lot of these way too early top 25s. And we're in the heart of the spring right now, so this is when college football is kind of popping again, all these spring games. But the first topic I do want to touch on today, speaking about that, is this offseason outlook. April 20th, I believe, is the spring game for Notre Dame. I'm not sure what it's labeled as. I saw it was labeled as the blue gold spring game. So
Right, that's
I know
correct.
each school likes to come up with their own thing. So heading into this offseason, what do you think are kind of the strengths and the weaknesses of this roster right now? Of course, we do have the spring portal window about to open, but at this moment where we stand, in your eyes, what are the strengths and the weaknesses of this roster?
Well, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, but I think obviously the biggest question mark is going to be quarterback.
For sure.
Bringing in Riley Leonard from Duke, who's coming off of an injury, so
Hmm.
I think he's supposed to start running next week. Hopefully, he'll be ready by spring ball. I guess he expects to be full speed, but he's going to be missing a quality time. Maybe during the summertime he'll be back even to practice. That's kind of a question mark how he recovers. But I saw him in an interview. He seems to be doing well, doing better than expected. He said he feels good, but it's kind of like Sam Hartman last year. He was great at Wake Forest. He got to Notre Dame. He was on fire maybe the first few games, but they really
Started out
weren't.
for sure.
They weren't playing really tough opponents. And then when the schedule got tougher, he kind of faded. So, but he's in a completely different system, new coaching staff. So it's kind of hard to gauge how they're going to do with just 1 year.
Hmm.
Riley Leonard says, the offense is similar with Coach Denbrock, so I think it'll be a lot of short game passes. They're also going to involve the running backs more, which is something they didn't do last year with Hartman, which maybe it hurt him.
Which is
Leonard,
weird because you had a guy like Audric Estime back there last year, who
yeah,
was one of the premier backs in all of college football.
yeah, and so they did. They kind of ran, like a 2, 3 tight end sets all the time, but sometimes it became too predictable, especially on third down. Defenses kind of knew what they were going to do. Whereas maybe this year they'll spread out the running backs where it'll almost be like a glorified run. Maybe get mismatches with the running back and linebackers. So I do think I don't know if that's going to be a strength or a weakness, but I do think that's the most pivotal question mark is quarterback. I feel like that's something Notre Dame's been missing the past few years. Maybe they've had names, but never really amounted to much. And I think a lot of people, when they heard Sam Hartman was coming to Notre Dame, they were thinking like playoffs, national
Right.
title,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out for whatever reasons. I felt like Sam Hartman, they ran he seemed more versatile at Wake Forest than they used him last year. I don't know. I don't know if they were being more conservative with him. So to me, that's the biggest question mark. I would say the biggest strength, though, is probably running back. I mean, they are stacked at running back. They got just looking at my notes here. They even got first, second, third, fourth string with Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Jabrian Payne. They got Kendron Young and Aeneas Williams coming in. So even if somebody goes down, it's the next guy up. So I think they're loaded at running back, especially listening to Coach Denbrock talk, how he's going to spread them out. Like I said, they'll be catching passes. They'll be able to use their talent and ability in space, which last year you could see like Audric Estime was the bulldozer running people
Hmm.
over. He had a burst maybe after contact, but you could see a guy like Jeremiah Love just right out the gate on just touching a football. He was anyway to me much more explosive this year. He'll have another year under his belt, so he'll probably be even bigger and stronger, probably faster. I'm excited to see him. And the question mark for me though is going to be losing Joe Alt and Blake Fisher, the
Yeah.
two tackles Notre Dame.
Two
I
beasts.
think, like kind of like the quarterback, that's going to be like a big question mark. Who's going to replace them? How are they going to do? Hopefully, everyone stays healthy. So I would say offensive tackle for me is a big question mark, as well as quarterback. That's where I'm kind of nervous. Let's see what they can do. But running back, I think, is hands down, in my opinion, probably their biggest strength.
Yeah, when I look at the roster, another thing I was kind of curious about, receivers wasn't exactly the best position group on the roster last year. It's not too much turnover, but you do bring in a guy like Chris Mitchell from FIU. That was a big get in the portal. They have a
Yes,
couple, incoming freshmen, but again, how many of these big time freshmen are going to be impactful right away in year one? How does that
yes.
receiver group position look, coming into the spring?
Well, I think Jaden Harrison from Marshall. Uh, Uh, and like you said, Chris Mitchell from Florida International, I think it's going to bring speed. It's going to bring experience. Then they still bringing back guys of their own. Jaden Thomas, Great House. They also have experience. Micah Gilbert's a young guy. He was showing flashes at practice. I think a lot of people thought Cam Williams would be that guy. He had more of the hype coming in, but Gilbert seemed to take kind of some of that light off of him, so he may play early. Deion Colsey. But I do think Jaden Harrison and Chris Mitchell, with their speed, that's also kind of something last year that was kind of missing. Now Hartman hit early on a few deep balls, but once again, it was like, who are they playing? They really weren't playing tough opponents. And it seemed like later in the year, that kind of fell off. They weren't throwing as much. It was more like you mentioned, Audric Estime just hand the ball off. This year, I think under Coach Denbrock, it's going to be fair game for everybody. If you're a tight end, you may be asked to block, to catch passes, short passes, deep passes, like receivers. I think it's going to be wide open. Whereas last year, I just think it just got to be stale. And even towards the end, I was actually at the Clemson game. Uh, that was bad. Like I
Yeah,
remember
no, that wasn't a
Hartman.
great game.
Yeah, Hartman threw a few interceptions. I remember looking on the sideline. Hartman was standing alone on the sideline, just hoping to get the ball back. He had thrown an interception. The rest of the offense was sitting on the bench, like everybody. And it kind of stood out to me. I don't know if he just felt like, he was taking the blame, taking one for the team, like he messed up, or maybe the team was just frustrated with the way the offense was flowing or not flowing. And a lot of guys maybe thought maybe they should be getting the ball. They weren't. And this year, I think they'll be throwing the ball around regardless of who's at quarterback. Uh, so yeah, I'm excited to see the receivers as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Riley Leonard goes, on this channel, I've been calling that he was going to be a beast for about 2 years now. Ever
Mm-hmm.
since, he played that game against Wake Forest against Sam Hartman 2 years ago, and I saw him just be phenomenal. And I think they won that game. I could be wrong, but even last year, I was really high on Duke. During the year, they had one of the best defenses in the country. That injury just kind of threw everything off. I thought if they had won that Notre Dame game, that was actually pretty close. I thought they could have made a sneaky playoff push, but anyways, yeah. So Riley Leonard's a beast. It's the arm talent, though, is a little bit questionable in my opinion, the ability to push the ball deep down the field. But he also brings, the dynamic ability with his legs that Sam Hartman didn't really have. So I think it's going to be like a unique look. Like you said, Chris Mitchell and these other guys are going to bring speed. So I think the offense, in all honesty, should be, a bit better than it was last year. And then you bring back guys on the defense. You have Watts. And Notre Dame recently with their safeties is not missing between Kyle Hamilton and now this guy, Xavier
Right.
Watts.
Yes.
Um, and they
And
get some
Watts,
transfers too, yeah.
yeah, Watts. I was listening to him the other day. He decided to come back. He just wants to prove himself. There was actually as many interceptions as he had. There was some that he dropped.
Mhm.
So he has a lot to prove for himself to kind of build his stock for the NFL draft. I guess he felt like he left some on the table, even though he had a really good year last year. Maybe he felt like sometimes he was just, I don't want to say lucky, but just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Whereas he was saying this year he would like to be more active, more proactive, making the play instead of letting it come to him. Uh, but yeah, the secondary with Ben Morrison, Xavier Watts. I mean,
Mhm.
they even against Ohio State, Ben Morrison, for the most part, he shut down Harrison.
Harrison, yeah.
Harrison had I don't know if he was hurt or injured. That's debatable, but he wasn't doing much. Morrison shut him down, and that was
His
probably his.
quarterback play was
Yeah,
questionable.
yeah. And so I think they'll be good on the back end of defense. Uh, Linebackers should be good. I know they lost J.D. Bertrand.
Mhm.
They lost Baptiste. He was an animal last year. He was another transfer. They're probably really going to miss him. But they got guys like Howard Cross, Riley
RJ
Mills.
Oben from
Yeah,
from Duke also.
yeah, Yes, those guys, especially him, he may have not been the highest rated defensive lineman, but I
Yeah, I
think
don't
he was
think
the
so.
top edge rusher coming in
Yeah,
out of the transfer portal. So they should be solid on defense as well. Defensively, they should be okay. Uh, it's kind of the quarterback. I think the quarterback, like last year, I think it's going to make or break the season. Uh, and it's a big name, another big
it is.
name, but
Who's aiming
uh,
for draft stock next year?
yes, yes. Maybe not as big as Hartman. Hartman had a lot of hype last year.
Yeah,
He got all of the sponsor deals, NIL deals, all this stuff. A lot of hype coming in. Leonard isn't getting as much, especially with the injury. So he's kind of even in quieter mode right now.
yeah,
People can't really see what he can do just yet with Notre Dame. Uh, but if he can just be a little better than Sam Hartman last year, if you combine additions on offense at receiver, the defense is still solid, and the schedule, I mean, if you're looking at it,
yeah. And I'll pull it up because we're gonna talk about it soon. It's a very winnable.
really
There
not
are some
gonna be
big
a loss.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just give us a little more than Hartman,
Hmm.
and man, I think they could go undefeated. Maybe one loss. They should
It's a
definitely be.
possibility.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the schedule because I do have a lot to say about that one. It's an interesting one, and I think it's a little better than last year's in terms of like the winnability of a lot of these games. Because
yeah.
obviously, no Ohio State, nothing like that. Um, but as far as the spring portal goes, do you expect any activity or major activity from Notre Dame in this spring portal window?
Uh, I think they're pretty set on everything as far as the portal goes. Even the upcoming recruiting class.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, that recruiting class is stacked.
even depending on the site that you go to look for rankings,
Mhm.
they're definitely top five. Some have them number one.
Yeah,
I think they have,
on three has him at fifth, and then I think 24/7 has him at one.
yeah, and they have I think they're ranked, yeah, number one, 19 commitments, so they're almost full going into the spring game.
Which is
So they're
ridiculous. That's unheard
yeah,
of.
yeah, so probably by the season they'll be recruiting for the next class.
Mhm.
But you never know. Decommitments, guys are just verbally committed. Maybe wait to see how the season goes. Do they
Right.
go undefeated? Is there some kind of craziness that happens where it's a letdown season and players want to jump ship, or they get offered crazy NIL money to go somewhere else? That's still be determined. But um, yeah, I think they're on a they have the momentum going in as far as recruiting the portal. There's a lot of hype. I think Coach Freeman doesn't really get as much credit as maybe he should as far as what he's doing as compared to Coach Kelly. And I think that's part of the reason why Coach Kelly left to go to LSU was recruiting. At LSU it's kind of homegrown talent, doesn't have to travel as much, meaning like flying around the
Right.
country. You need a lot of energy for that. Now at LSU, maybe he doesn't have to travel as much. Whereas Coach Freeman has a lot, seems like he has a lot of energy. He's always everywhere. It's just doing everything, and he has a good staff, a younger staff that seem like they're energetic, and I think that's why he's getting the guys he's getting. You know, uh, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to touch on that because this recruiting class. I mean, you're right. They've pretty much filled up, and we're not even at the spring game yet, which is again unheard of, especially for a program of this magnitude. You almost never see that. What's their biggest focus, kind of like position wise? Is there a
Uh,
specific position group that they're honed in on?
there's a few guys I have here that I think they're really looking after. They're obviously, with the way college football is today, an edge rusher. I don't think you can have enough guys that can get to
That's
the
true.
quarterback. So I think that's going to be generic. They're probably going to look at that across the board. There's a safety out of North Carolina, Jadon Blair. Derek Mutter was a wide receiver out of Las Vegas. Mark Zachary, in-state talent out of Indiana. Gavin Nix, a linebacker out of Florida. And then he just signed Anthony Sacca, a linebacker out of New Jersey. So they pretty solid at linebacker, I would say. Gavin Nix is an animal, though, so I think they would make an exception for him if they could land him. But that seems to be probably their top targets as far as finishing out this class. If they could land a few of those guys, I think that's what they're looking after for a class of 25. But they have a
That,
guy named Knight, the quarterback coming in out of Mississippi. He's
yeah,
kind of the ambassador of this class. He's always hyping Notre Dame, so I'm sure he's behind the scenes recruiting guys to come. So
which
that
helps.
that's a
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good thing to have, especially in the southeastern in that region.
yeah,
You
that's a
have a
big
guy out of
region.
Mississippi that's kind of maybe educating guys in Notre Dame that maybe have never been to Indiana or don't even know where Notre Dame is, to have someone down there to kind of be another mouthpiece. That's really important. So I think that's awesome that they got a guy in Mississippi that can kind of do a little recruiting down there.
Right. And as far as like big name targets, the 5 stars, the guy at the top, is there anyone at the top maybe that we should be looking for, whether it's just for them to come in and steal, or a potential flip target? Are there any big name 5-star guys that Notre Dame could be going after?
A lot of the guys I mentioned are 4 star slash 5 star. I mean, they're up there. I think Gavin Nix would be the guy, the linebacker of Florida. I think that's the guy that would seal the deal. That would be the guy I would be going after.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see as it gets closer. Of course, this class right now, it's still super early, but this class right now seems to be loaded with offensive linemen at the top. And what better pitch from a school than to show just the countless number of offensive linemen that it feels like have been drafted in the last few years coming out of Notre Dame. So I guess I would I'd like to keep an eye there, but I guess who knows? We'll probably figure it out as we get closer and they see what kind of needs they have. As far as the 2024 class, just real quick, there is a guy, the freshman CJ Carr, coming in, the quarterback with Riley Leonard out for the spring game. Unfortunately, fans won't get to see him for a while. Will we get to? Will the fans get to see their first look at CJ Carr in this spring game?
Yeah, I think he'll be probably. I would say he's behind Steve Angeli and Minchie right now. So I'm sure they'll have two of each playing. Riley Leonard will probably be on the sideline watching, but I would expect to see all of those guys play a little bit.
What's the buzz around him? Kind of like, is he a potential quarterback of the future candidate, or is it maybe just a perennial backup? Like, what's the kind of fan
I think
momentum or fan
the
feeling
hope
for
is
him?
that he will play, maybe obviously sit out a year to
Hmm.
grow, and then you'll have Deuce Knight come in. So you really, the goal or the plan would be to have both of those guys play a couple of years. Maybe Carr would be like a 3 years and done type of guy, and
Maybe.
then you have Deuce Knight come in, who is probably going to be I don't know if you remember this guy, Jarius Jackson. Maybe the same kind of size and build as him at Notre Dame, but uh, I would say much more talented. I think Deuce Knight can do it all as far as his size, his arm strength, his mobility, agility. So he's getting a lot of hype for the 25 class. But CJ Carr had a lot of hype for 24. So I think Notre Dame's hoping that they're able to kind of get the most out of Carr, and then he'll
Hmm.
move on and he'll pass the baton to Deuce Knight. So I
I
think
don't
that's
think
the
you could
plan.
ever have too many good quarterbacks on the
Yeah.
roster.
So I'm kind of curious to see, and I thought about that this year with Riley Leonard moving forward with the transfer portal. When is Notre Dame going to kind of let
Yeah, that
one
was
of
definitely a
their
thought
own,
that I was thinking too.
yes, one of their own kind of recruits, developments play where it's kind of homegrown instead of picking up older guys. So CJ Carr may be the first of those, and I think Deuce Knight will follow him.
I mean, I'm guessing like from an outside look that they're just getting these older guys because they just want the experience, proven commodity, while they're in a
Yeah,
win now mindset to help one of these young guys come up. I don't think it's necessarily like a testament that they have a lack
yeah,
of faith in any of these young guys. I
yeah,
think it's just they're too young right now. We're in win now mode. We want to get proven commodities, but I guess we'll see. I think a lot of that narrative will hedge on what CJ Carr and Deuce Knight end up doing in their careers. And like if next year if they go and look for a portal quarterback, then I would be concerned and think,
yeah.
okay, what's going wrong with the development? But for right now, I think it still kind of makes sense.
And then it's going to be interesting to see when Deuce Knight comes in and CJ Carr is playing. Can he wait? Will he wait? That'll
Yeah,
be the thing because now they have the option to leave. So
right.
it's going to be a matter of, I guess, being patient, which I don't know if guys really have that anymore today, but that's going to be
It
interesting to
doesn't
see.
seem like it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I think the plan would be for Carr to play, I guess, 2 or 3 years, and then Deuce Knight will just kind of patiently wait, and then he'll give his 2 or 3 years and move on, and hopefully that starts the rotation instead of having the one hit wonders. But because it's
Right.
so hard to develop with new coaches, new teammates in just 1 year, especially like Riley Leonard coming off an injury,
Yeah,
he's
it just
already
makes
missed.
it even harder.
He's already missing time.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And it's gonna be interesting to see how that all plays out for sure. Before we get into the whole schedule talk, because I do want to spend some time on that schedule because it's just intriguing all around. Obviously, realignment is really big in college football right now. We have all this talk of different shifts, and Florida State is in their battle with the ACC, Florida State and Clemson, which I've been keeping up with that. Where does Notre Dame, in your opinion, fit into all this realignment? Me personally, in the last interview I did on this channel, me and the other guy were talking about, hoping ideally that Notre Dame would be in the ACC to strengthen that conference, regardless of how realistic that is. Where do you see them fitting into this whole realignment thing?
Well, I think kind of like the Olympic sports right now, like, basketball, baseball, I guess, all the Olympic sports, Notre Dame's in the ACC, and it also
Hmm.
aligns with their academics. So I think that's kind of why Notre Dame picked the ACC versus any other conference. As far as football, I think it would make sense. I think it would be needed there. Uh, Now, I don't know when it comes to with the TV contract with
Right,
NBC
exactly. That's where everything gets tricky.
and how much money a conference would offer them or share some of the prize with them, whether that's the Big Ten or the ACC. I'm not sure, but I think if you're already kind of familiar with the ACC, with the other sports, as well as Notre Dame has to play X amount of games versus the ACC anyway in football, even though they're
Hmm.
not in a conference. To me, that would make the most sense to just stick with the ACC.
Yeah, I think and this is just a biased perspective, but I do feel like it's the best for college football. I think it adds prestige to the ACC and creates more viability if you have programs like Clemson, Florida State, and Notre Dame, and when they're at their best, you can include a Miami in there too because that is a brand name. When you have four big teams like that at the top, it adds credibility to your conference, and it makes it so you can compete with these teams like a Big Ten, like an SEC. Now realistically, I don't know, but I think it is just interesting to keep an eye on and for the sake of not just having two mega conferences rule everything, I hope that something like that, takes place one day. But with that being said, we'll move on to their schedule, and I'll pull it up here so we can see because the first thing I want to ask you, it's an interesting schedule. Of course, like you said, we're not going to see Riley Leonard until the opening game, and not there's not many worse environments to open your season in than on the road at Texas A&M and M and Kyle Field. But if we look at the schedule as a whole, there's only three ranked games as of right now. I think towards the end of the year that could change with maybe even a Georgia Tech or but like a USC becoming ranked. I just want to ask you now, where do you think what is your floor, your actual prediction, and then a ceiling for what this team's record is in
Well,
2024?
and just a little nugget in there. Notre Dame was actually supposed to play Miami this season, but I
Oh,
think
really?
Miami had a scheduling blunder with, I want to say it was South Florida.
That sounds
So
like a Miami thing to do.
yes. So now Notre Dame is going to play at Miami in 2025, and then they'll host Miami in 2026. So I think Notre Dame was given the option to pick, I don't know if it was October, I think it was October 5th or November 23rd, were the open slates to fill in a game. So Notre Dame is filling in Army for the Shamrock game on November 23rd. But Miami was actually supposed to be on the schedule this season.
Which would have made it
Uh,
quite a bit tougher schedule. I think this is the right year to have that fall through with them getting
yeah.
guys like Cam Ward in the building.
So, but anyway, going back to the schedule, I mean, if you're looking at it, A&M is going to be tough, especially with the new additions, especially Riley Leonard at quarterback, kind of like what we started the show with. That's the biggest question mark. Also, big question mark at left tackle with Joe Alt. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But after that, I mean, Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Navy. That should all be wins. So that's
Even though Louisville did get them last year.
yes, and I think the Louisville game was kind of for them the right spot at the right
It was,
time.
yeah, I
That
totally
was
agree
a
with that.
gauntlet of a schedule. It was like what was it, like three or four back-to-back night games on TV.
And they were all
Uh,
ranked, if I'm not wrong.
yeah,
I think
I
they
don't
were all
know
ranked
who.
games.
Yeah, I don't know who made that schedule last
Yeah.
year, but that was craziness.
It was a
So
schedule loss. I feel pretty confident when I say that too.
I think they'll have all wins, maybe even be undefeated or have one loss going into the Florida State game. Now,
Hmm.
Florida State, it is in
That is who I'm
November.
a fan of, by the way. I will be a little biased when I when I
Okay,
say
well,
that. That is kind of my team.
hopefully it's I don't know. I don't know how cold it'll be, but just hope it's really cold. I
Right.
think Florida State were shocked like the last time they visited Notre Dame. I think it was over when those guys got off the bus because of the weather. So hopefully it's cold. Florida State will be interesting though. You know, I guess that'd be probably the toughest game on the schedule, in my opinion, would be Florida State.
Yeah.
Uh, so even if you gave them a loss to them or A&M, I think at that point they could have one loss or no losses. Then they got Virginia, Army, and that Southern Cal with no Caleb Williams. So
Yeah, I'm not sure what that whole quarterback situation looks like,
yeah,
and we all know what that defense is. And I was watching that Notre Dame game against USC this past season, and they just tore them apart because
yeah,
no defense is going to catch up to you
yeah,
eventually.
and the physicality was.
It was unmatched. USC had no response.
So with that said, I mean, are you looking at 11-1, 12-0? Now that's if everything goes as planned. If Riley Leonard is as good as advertised, you know, I think that's very doable. Then I think we're going to have the extended playoffs this year, so
Hmm.
uh, they should be in the mix. It'll, in my opinion, it'll just be what seed
Right, and
will
what
they?
sucks with that is because you can't get a top 4 seed because they're not associated with a conference, but I don't think they can get the 5 either because they're technically not a group of 5 team. So I think the best case scenario is the 6th seed. I don't know how. I think they do have the 5 and 7 format where it is the 5 conference auto bids and then
Hmm.
the 7. So that's the only bad part about not being in a conference. And who knows, maybe that'll change. We were just talking a few minutes ago. Maybe that will encourage them to join a conference. But that puts them at kind of a disadvantage because you can at best get uh one home game really. I don't even know if it would be considered a home game.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head how that seating will work. But I know just looking at the schedule, they should be in it. I mean,
Yeah.
even if it was only 4 teams this year, I mean,
Yeah, you go undefeated with this schedule. I'd say it
you
qualifies
know, I
you
think
to
it's
be in it, but
doable for them to go undefeated, especially if maybe if they could beat an A&M and maybe A&M has a decent season afterwards, or Florida State is highly ranked going into that game if they would
right,
beat
right.
them. And
Which
even
I
if Southern
expect them to
Cal
be, but
was
that's
surprised this year,
yeah.
so they have those big games at the right time. One game's to start the season, one game's kind of halfway through, one game's the end of the season, and those are going to be their landmark games this year. So it's kind of this schedule this year kind of looks like it's perfectly made for them.
So if I had to get you to lock in not a ceiling I want to get your ceiling, but I think it's 12-0 from what you've said. If I had to get you like a locked in prediction of realistically what you think is going to happen, do you think that 12-0 is a realistic prediction, or is it maybe leaning towards 11-1?
I'd say probably 11-1. The A&M game worries me because of the question marks, but after that, I think they're going to have a few games after that where they can really grow and kind of build a rapport and see who's who and what they are and what's their strengths and weaknesses. And then by the time they do get to Florida State, I think they'll be ready for that. And then they're always ready for Southern Cal. So the A&M game, I think if they are going to lose, that would be the one. Other than that, I think they should win the rest.
And as far as the floor goes, a worst case scenario kind of look. There are tough games on here, right? Like at Texas A&M, like we just said. I think, like you said, it's the first game. It's on the road. A&M should have a decent roster. And a new coach, Mike Elko from Duke. You got a game like that. You have Florida State and at USC, who knows? Maybe their new quarterback's a stud. What's a realistic floor for this team?
Well, and if you look at the schedule, like Georgia Tech, it's at Georgia Tech, but
That
it's
could
really,
be a sneaky tough
but
game.
it's really at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, right?
Yeah,
So it's really not a true home game for Georgia Tech. Then Navy's in New Jersey. That's also kind of an alternate site. You got Army in a Yankee Stadium. It's a Shamrock game. So even the away games really aren't true away games. So it's really A&M, Purdue, and Southern Cal are the true away games.
yeah,
So I think that also favors Notre Dame with the
it does.
schedule. Uh, you know, yeah. I mean, unless Louisville kind of surprises them again, even though it'll be a home game for Notre Dame, that could maybe be a surprise. But I don't see Miami of Ohio sneaking up on them or Northern
No,
Illinois, Virginia. Yeah, I'm sticking with it. 11-1, worst case. 12
that's
and
the
0.
floor. 11-1. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. When I look at the schedule, I think it's a bold take, but I can respect it. I say the same thing about my team.
Now that's also it's good because it's like, man, they could be 12-0 and 11-1, but it's
Right,
also bad because it may show. I guess my question is, does that mean Notre Dame is that good, or is the schedule that weak?
right. And who knows?
That's
Maybe it's a mix of both.
yeah, that's kind of I'm saying 11-1 and 12-0. More so looking at the schedule, Notre Dame should beat those
Hmm.
teams, but how many of those teams are, scary? I mean, I guess, like I said, A&M, Florida State, Southern Cal, and you and I both said, well, we don't really know about Southern Cal.
Right, exactly.
Really, out of
If
12,
I had to bet on it,
yeah,
I would say Southern Cal turns out to be nothing.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's very realistic this year. But once again, I think it all comes down to quarterback. What can Riley Leonard do? Is he going to be as good as advertised? I do agree with you. I think he has to work on his long ball. I think we'll see intermediate passes, short passes to running backs, kind of build his confidence, and then maybe start taking deep throws. Whereas Hartman, I felt like was kind of the opposite. I always felt like Hartman's best throw was the deep ball. So it is going to be. I think it's going to be a different look this year. Coach Denbrock coming in. I know all of the players are excited. I was watching Cooper Flanagan, an interview with him. He was saying how, when he was in high school, he was basically on a team that ran the ball a lot. Well, now with Mitchell Evans out, he's been getting a lot more reps, and I think we're going to see more of him. I think he's a guy that can really develop. I'm curious to see how he's going to look in another year from now as a pass catcher. So I think the offense is going to look much different than last year.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would worry about is, say you go 11-1, right, and you lose that game to Florida State at home, because it is a toss up. When I talked about Florida State's schedule, I predicted it as a loss, to be on the record about it. But I think it could go either way. It comes back to haunt you because, of course, you'll probably be in the playoffs. But in terms of seeding, you're probably arguing against some other 11-1, 10-2 teams at that point. And if your best win is Texas A&M on the road, who has gotten this preseason hype every year, I feel like that's a scenario where the schedule can kind of come back to haunt you, because if your best win is either Texas A&M or a Louisville, who they're
Yeah,
mixed. I mean, my opinion on them is mixed. I think that comes back to haunt you. It probably hurts your seed by a few rank. Not saying you'll be out of the playoffs, but it might hurt by a few rank. It might cost you home field at that 6th spot, which
yeah,
is what sucks.
I
But
agree, and that's what I was saying. I'm seeing 12-0, 11-1, but
it kind of
that
has to be 12-0.
yeah,
That seems to be
that
the
could be
only
a
hope.
bad thing though. If I guess people are going to look at it as a weak schedule,
Yeah.
they're really going to give you as much credit for your record. So, um, yeah, so Notre Dame needs A&M to maybe have a great season.
Right.
If they lose that first game, at least A&M will have 11 more games to go to really prove themselves. And then we need Florida State to be up there, highly ranked. And then it looks like Notre Dame will have some extra days for that game. They play Navy on October 26th. They'll play Florida
Yeah, so
State
they get the bye
9th.
week right before, which helps.
So that'll definitely help. Uh, so yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, when I look at as far as the floor goes, I feel like at very worst, is 9-3, because maybe Florida State and A&M get you, and between Louisville, Georgia Tech, and USC, just one of them sneaks up on you. One of them is sneaky good, but I feel like 9-3 is like the absolute worst case scenario,
Yeah, I think
and
that would be a
I don't
letdown.
even think that's realistic. I think that's just
Yeah,
the absolute worst. My prediction was 11-1 because I think A&M. I think between Elko being just a really good coach in College Station, first game of the year with that new roster, I think they get you. I want
and
to say Florida
the
State
weather,
beat them, but I've already predicted that it's not going to happen, so I can't flip back for the sake of the video.
and it'll probably be hot as hell at A&M in August. So
Exactly, that
it's
too.
the opposite of Florida State for Notre Dame in November. It's going to be role reversal in August. So I don't
Right.
know if they can duplicate that heat in Indiana. So everything's going to be going against them week one.
Yeah, and then it says the time is TBA, so to be fair, it could end up being a night game, and maybe it's not as hot. But if they put that game during the day, that
Yeah.
might be cause for concern. But the ceiling, I agree with you, is 12-0, 100%. I think if they beat A&M, they beat Florida State. No one else on this schedule should get them, and I think that should put them at the 6th seed, and we'll see what happens in the playoffs depending on who
And
they
and
draw.
I think like last year there was letdown games. Like after a big game,
Oh,
there was
yeah, 100%.
this year after A&M they get Northern Illinois, so it's really not a letdown spot.
No,
After
no.
Florida State they get Virginia. It's a home game, shouldn't be a letdown spot. And then they end the season at USC. So even that the game after the game also favors Notre Dame this year.
Yeah, I
So
would maybe be concerned for like a look ahead and USC kind of, especially if you're undefeated right then. You're looking ahead
yeah,
at the
I
postseason. You feel like
yeah
you've clinched it. That's
yeah
what I would be worried about. But again, I just don't think that's happening.
yeah.
As far as season success goes, though, like we're talking about all these high expectations, and we're both putting them over 10 wins at 11 and 12. Um, do they need a deep playoff run for this season to be considered a success? And is there any pressure on Freeman? Is there any job pressure if this season kind of backfires similar to last
Well,
year?
I think coming off the heels of last year with all of the hype Sam Hartman got coming in, I think Notre Dame fans had high expectations. And so kind of the way it turned out, then here we go again, almost a mirror image. Now it's Riley Leonard coming in. The schedule may even be a little bit easier. There's
Mhm.
extra playoff spots. Like, I don't know if he can go 9-3. Like, he's not going to get a pass at all with the schedule, with last year, with the talent on the schedule. On the roster this year with the transfer portal players coming in, like we talked about. Now you have
Right.
speed at receiver, experience. You have a loaded backfield. Like you're solid on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I don't think he's going to get a pass. Even though, in my opinion, I think he's done a great job with what he has, with what he had coming in. He's rebuilding a roster with his recruiting. Yeah, I think he really is going to have to go 11-1 or 12-0. I think any less than that is unacceptable. And then once we're in the playoffs, to answer your question,
Mhm.
uh, if you would lose a game, if it's a close game, maybe that's acceptable.
And I think it depends who you lose to
Yes,
also. Now, if you
but it
get
cannot
sick,
be a
right,
blowout.
like
Cannot
mhm,
be. You can't be the favorite and lose. First of
right.
all, and if you do lose and you're the underdog, it can't be a blowout. I mean, Notre Dame's been embarrassed too many times by big teams, and that's kind of why you know
It's the stigma right now,
that's
for
exactly that.
unfortunately, it seems to be the stigma about them in the playoffs.
Yes, yes.
Now, to be fair, like, it wasn't only them. I think every 4th seed that's gotten in most years, not this past year, we had good games, but most years that Oklahoma, the Cincinnati, the Notre Dame, whoever slipped into that 4th spot was getting, a blown out in that first round, but I'm not
I
saying
think
he'll be
is when Notre Dame played some of them big dogs, whether it was other bowl games or regular season, and they got smoked during those games. It was kind of like the prior history is what added on to it.
true, yeah.
And like last year, like maybe their best win was a close loss to Ohio State, and that's not a good thing to have. Like
It's
my
not a good
best
outlook on the year.
close loss, and that seems to be Notre Dame's thing. Even when they beat Clemson, Trevor Lawrence wasn't playing. You know what I mean? And
Mhm,
then when they
yeah.
did play Trevor Lawrence, you know, same old thing happened.
Yeah, it sucks. I'm not saying he would be fired if they had this 9-3 season or bad season, but do you think he's on the hot seat going into next year if this season kind of
Yes, if
falters?
if he would go 9-3 this year, 100%.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, especially after last year with the hype Hartman
Mhm.
got, it would be back-to-back years. They landed the big quarterback in the portal. Yeah, with this schedule, you can't go 9-3. Not especially Notre Dame hasn't won a title since 1988. I mean, they're
True.
still making T-shirts and selling them. National champions 1988. That's crazy to me,
Yeah.
and it probably makes people uneasy. But what else are they going to print? You know what I mean? So they
Exactly. They just don't have anything.
they
There's no
have to do
conference
it. But
championship shirts to print either.
yeah, so yeah, 9-3 is definitely unacceptable. That should be in a locker room right now. 9-3 is unacceptable.
Yeah. I
In
agree.
24.
And it's just weird because when you look at all the aspects that go into a good coach, it's like, are you winning? Are you developing? Are you recruiting? Off the top, like on service level, maybe the wins aren't where they should be, but the recruiting looks like it's certainly good. It's still early to tell, but he's top 15, top 10, top 5 now, most years, and the development seems to go well, but we'll see. I agree. I think 9-3 for better or worse, he's put on the hot. I don't know if he gets fired, but I think he's on the hot seat going into
Yeah, I
next year.
think I think I think his recruiting will save him because they have
Hmm.
such a good class coming in. So I don't think it'll be that drastic, but I think he'd probably have 1 year to prove himself,
Yeah,
or else.
agreed. I
Yeah,
think it's the same situation with the Florida Gators right now. Billy Napier has shown the ability to recruit, and I bring up them just because the guys I host this with are Florida Gator fans and Hurricane fans. Um, but he's recruited well. It's top 10 classes, 5-star recruits, but the on the field product's not there. So this is his last year too. I think those two situations could end up being similar.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but that's about all I have. Honestly, it was. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered everything. Yeah, I look forward to a good season for Notre Dame. I'll be shocked if they go 9-3, but I hate to keep harping on this. I think it's all going to come down to Riley Leonard. I think that's
But I totally agree with you. I think
And
it's
it's
very true.
scary to put it all on one guy. And then he's got to stay healthy. Even if he does come out and he's shining, you got to hope that he stays healthy the entire season. Uh, but I think that's going to make or break the season. The offensive line and Riley Leonard, to me, are the biggest question marks. Uh, and I think that'll decide the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really looking forward to the season all around, but I think Notre Dame's going to be one of these more fun teams to watch. Riley Leonard, just a guy I've invested personal, take credibility in, so I'm looking forward to
Hmm.
seeing him hopefully do well, and I'm just hoping that the season goes as planned. I'm not going to root for them to go 12-0 because that means they'd beat Florida State, but hey, 11-1 is perfectly good too. Dan, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it, and I'll have to talk to you before the season or after the spring game or something to see if
Okay,
your
well,
expectations are still the same.
yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll get together again for sure.
Of course, sounds good. Guys, remember, like the video, subscribe, and comment down below what you want to see more of. Trying to cater to everything you want. We have plenty of videos coming soon, a UFC 300 recap, NBA playoffs preview, and an NBA mock draft preview. So I'm going to get all that out soon. Until next time, thank you for watching. Daniel, again, thank you for coming on. Until next
Thank
time, guys.
you. All right, bye.